Hey guys, I'm back with another video for you. Sorry that I did not post 2 videos last week. I was watching X-Men 97. Here's my little Cyclops. I got this like 10 plus years ago. Found him when I was cleaning my room. He's kind of weird. He can actually fit his body inside his head. So we'll show you that at the end of the video. But also speaking of X-Men 97, JJK2, the season 2 needs to be way more accessible. I'm not going to buy a Crunchyroll subscription to watch that. So anyways, so today we're going to look at Tigra. I really like the Protectors. Here's him in his head. I like Protectors in Marvel Strike Force. I think they are the more easy to understand kits. You know, what makes a brawler, what makes a blaster, what makes a support, you know, the controller. Like, these are very vague things. And I think brawler, you know, for example, like I think a brawler is slightly more tanky than a blaster, and a blaster is more of like a glass cannon. I think it's hard to really see that when you're looking at their kits and be like, is this a good brawler? Is this a good blaster? Because it really comes down to their stats. So, you know, it's really hard to actually see if somebody's good at that, because you're like, are the numbers high or are the numbers not high? So I like Protectors because I think Marvel Strike Force is much more creative with how they do Protectors, because they go beyond just this character is going to taunt, you know? And I think Tigra's a good example of that. I like the core idea of Tigra, although I think Tigra is a really bad character in the game. So we're going to talk about her kit in more detail. She's a part of the new Avengers team, so I'll show you guys what that looks like if we scroll over. As you can see, I don't have Tigra really that built up at all. That's kind of evidence of the fact I don't think she's that good. The new Avengers team, they are a war team. So if we're going to change my team, look at this. This is my grab bag Spider-Man team right here. Get these guys out of here. I already have the team right here. So this is a new team. This was a team that was comprised of a Thing rework, an Agent Coulson rework, and then Tigra, Mockingbird, and Ronin were new. Look at Thing. He's kind of, his arm's kind of cutting through right there. Let's swap it up so it's not so disturbing. But anyways, this is the team right here. This is the new Avengers team. This is a war team, pretty much exclusively a war team. That's all they're good for. Tigra's newer to the game, so she's not been a part of any other team, although I almost guarantee she's going to be a part of another team in due time, and we'll talk about that later. The only other thing of note about this team, the only thing that makes them remotely relevant, because I think they're kind of boring. I think people moved on from them really quickly, and I don't blame. I mean, look at this team. Is there anyone really exciting on here? Like, who cares about these 5 characters? I'm going to be honest. Like, hey, look, I love it. Agent Coulson's cool. You know, Mockingbird, Ronin thing. Like, they're neat, but like, who cares about this team, honestly? Like, it's like the B tier characters. And so, you know, in terms of thematically, they're not that interesting. They're a war offense team. Really, the only thing that keeps them remotely relevant is they're needed for Green Goblin Classics trials. So that's the only reason why I have them a little bit built up. Even then, I built them up a bit of the way, and I was like, man, I hate building up this team. I'm just going to wait for them to add more tags to Green Goblin Classic like they did for the Scourge trials, for the Apocalypse people. So, you know, that's how much I don't like the new Avengers as a team. I think they are fine. I think they have some interesting team gimmicks, but in terms of actually the act of them in the game and how they were designed kit-wise to be so war exclusive and new Avenger exclusive, I think they are pretty boring. So let's take a look at Tigra's passive first. This is really when you're going to start to see the bread and butter of her kit. This is what makes Tigra unique. So she gains a lot of evades. You're going to see that. And when there are dodges on dodge, so not just when she dodges, I think it's when anyone dodges. Don't quote me. I mean, you know, let me know if I'm wrong in the comments below. But my understanding is this is when anyone dodges, which would make sense thematically with the team because she's applying evade to them all. If this is only for Tigra, then it'd be like garbage. So I'm assuming it's for the entire team. Might even be for the enemy team too. I'm not sure. She also gives damage, max health. Kind of weird she gives damage as a protector. We'll talk about what I think we could do with that later on. She gets speed up, but really she's only spawning with 2 evades, and she's only going to give 1 random adjacent new Avenger ally 2 evades. That is atrocious. You know, like that would be bad if it was not even exclusive to new Avenger allies. Like, that is just a horrible passive. Like, I do not get that. Like, why not give the whole team evades? Why not give, at the very least, give the entire new Avenger team evades? Now, she does do that when you're on war, so it gets +3 evades, and then she gives those to all new Avenger allies. So outside of war, she's not really protecting the team that much because she's not giving them those evades. Tigra does have some taunts on her kit, but given the fact that outside of war, she's not going to get that many evades. Really, that's the most important thing. That's her survivability right there. She's gonna die quickly, and that's it. She's you know, this is not that good of a tank outside of war. One thing that is kind of cool also as I do like right below here, she lowers damage reduction by 25% for all enemies with bleed and lowers resistance for all enemies with bleed. I think this is really interesting. I wish this is something they leaned into more. I feel like they could bump these numbers up, like lower damage reduction by like 75% or something like that. I think it'd be really interesting to build a bleed comp. You know, there's a lot of stats in these games, a lot of debuffs, and you know, for example, like blind. You know, what really interacts with blind? You know, for example, I think we have like Daredevil and Hawkeye who have some pretty high accuracy, so they can get past blind, and you know, Rhino clears blind, but that's really cool that Rhino clears blind. Like, that gives him a niche in the game. I think people look to Rhino for that. He has gotten a lot of use over the years. He fills a role in the game because he interacts with these debuffs in a unique way. And I like this idea of interacting with bleeds. This gives her synergy with, like, for example, like somebody like Wolverine who's applying bleeds. I believe Deadpool applies bleeds. Tons of characters that apply a lot of bleeds. And I think it would be engaging if you were encouraged to build a bleed team. I do not think there's enough here for that. Like, lowering damage reduction by 25%, that's not enough. I think if they like tripled that number, there would actually be room for like a bleed composition or something like that. I think that would be really interesting. Perhaps she could be a plug and play character. There's a lot of teams that would be a lot better if she could then lower the damage reduction whenever they have bleeds applied to the enemies. I think that would be really cool. I really think they should lean heavier into that, taking advantage of the bleed that enemies have, especially because it kind of fits into her, like, you know, she's like a tiger, or I guess Tigra. I'd assume she's a tiger. I think she's like an alien or something. I don't know. She has a mystic element. I don't really care about her backstory, but I really do like that part of her passive, and we're going to see these bleeds and evades throughout her kit. So if we take a look at the basic attack, relatively standard stuff. She's applying bleed. It is piercing, which is nice. Piercing is better than normal damage. I think it ignores their defense stat or defense up or something like that. What is cool right here, we have another play on bleed. If any target had bleed, apply an additional 2 bleed to that target. So she's, again, putting out lots of bleeds. She's going to gain an evade here. So she's going to keep giving herself 1 evade a turn. Pretty much all of her skills are going to give her at least 1 evade. But if you imagine she has a taunt on her, you're looking at like at least 5 attacks hitting her in between each turn. So she's only going to block 1 out of those 5 attacks. So really, this is not enough to make her a viable tank. If we take a look at her special right here, again, piercing, which is nice. She's applying 2 bleed, which is nice. Gains an evade. This is one of those instances where she's going to gain a taunt, and then she gets defense up, death proof, and immunity, which is nice. This helps with her survivability. Really, what I want is this additional 2 evade. I think she needs way more evades in her kit for it to actually be viable. You know, she doesn't have a high dodge chance or something like that, like the spider characters. You know, spider characters might not have a evade, but they still have like a relatively high dodge chance sometimes and stuff like that. That gives them some survivability. No, Tigra does not dodge. If she does not have evade, she's going to get hit and she will die. Like, there's no way around that. What is also nice in War, she gets safeguard, so that is very handy. So that makes her really tanky in War. Honestly, I don't think this should be exclusive to War. I think this is, if you were to take these in War parts of the kit and make these baseline, I think she would still not be a good character because, you know, this is good damage. She's applying bleed. You know, she's making herself, giving a little bit of evade, and she gets some death proof, but like, Tigra doesn't do that much. Like, there's not a lot of utility. She applies some evades, and then she does some damage, and then that's it. She sits around and waits for the enemy team to kill her. If we take a look at the ultimate here, again, attacking all enemies. You know, I don't really care if these attack all enemies. Like, it's kind of like, eh. She's clearing immunity, which is not bad, but with safeguard in the game too, you know, clearing immunity is kind of like one half of the issue. You know, we have safeguard in the game as well, so like, you know, is clearing immunity that good? She's applying bleed, so that's nice. She's getting an evade, which again is nice, like I talked about with the other parts of her kit, but 1 evade is not enough to get you to the next turn. And she is getting a taunt. So as you can see with the ability before this and the ultimate, she is getting a taunt with both her special and ultimate, but that is it. These have pretty long cooldowns, so she's built around War. So it's not necessarily horrible. She's not built for long battles. She's built for a quick war battle where she gets 2 taunts, and hopefully by the end of 2 rounds you pretty much have the enemy team killed. If you don't, you're probably going to lose. So she's really dependent on these 2 taunts, and that's it. It's not like Captain America, who he gets his taunts up pretty frequently, and then where he's getting survivability by his blocking, Tigra is getting some survivability by her dodging. And I do like the ability right here with the evades. I like especially with this spawn where she gives evades to the team, where Captain America, he gets his taunt up frequently and he has a ton of survivability by blocking. Tigra's taunt is not up as often, but then she gives evade to the team, so it's kind of like a roundabout way of protecting the team. So I enjoy that conceptually. I do not think there are enough evades going out to the team. I think right here, basically, she's giving herself an evade. It'd be nice if she gave adjacent allies evade here with the basic tank with specials right here. She's getting the taunt and evade for herself. But again, I wish there were evades to the team going out here. I think maybe just on the passive right here, we need evades coming out every turn, remember, like +1 to the entire team or something like that. I think even then, it would not be that good. Because again, Tigra is, if you had somebody do an AoE, that uses up all the evades. There we are. Like, that's it. That was a waste of it. And so, you can still hit the team. It's not like they're going to be invulnerable. And I think this would give them a lot of survivability to compensate for the fact that Tigra is not going to have a taunt up a lot of the time. In war, she's applying trauma, which is good. Trauma is a really good negative effect. She's giving more bleeds, and then she's getting more evades and more taunts. So this is nice. But again, she's only going to get taunt for like these 2 or 3 turns. And then after that, what's going to happen with Tigra? That's about it. Then you're counting on the evades to get you through the match. So if we take a look, I think there are some pros here. I really enjoyed the spin on bleeds. I do not think there are enough numbers there to make it actually viable. I think if they boosted those numbers, that could be a really interesting niche for Tigra. One pro, this is not going to apply if you're watching this. I'm recording this 2024. But if you're watching this like 2 years from now, this is no longer relevant. She is relatively modern. So, for example, like, she's better than Drax. It's a low bar to clear, but she has better stats than Drax because she came out later in the game's lifespan than Drax did. I also enjoy the premise of giving evades to the team. I think they do not go far enough with this premise, but I do like the idea that Tigra gets some survivability herself from having evades. And then I also like the fact that she'll give the team some evades and to kind of compensate for the fact that she is not always going to have a taunt. Some cons. No cat team. I'm being real right now. Like, we got Black Panther, we got Tigra, Wolverine, kind of cat adjacent, Sabretooth, kind of cat adjacent. We got Black Panther 1mm. I think there could be a cat team. I think that would be funny. Okay, I think that would just be kind of fun if they did a cat tag and we had a cat team. Doesn't have to be like super intense, but maybe just for like a one-off event or something like that. I'm just throwing it out there. We have a lot of cat characters in this game. It is kind of, Marvel has a lot of cat characters, I guess. So here we find ourselves. West Coast expected. So I will say, she is not going to stay on the New Avengers. She is not. This New Avengers team, I guarantee, in like 2 years from now, will not exist as it does right now. Coulson might get pulled off to some other, maybe more Shield-focused team, like he's kind of meant to be on, and he was originally Thing. Once the Fantastic Four movie comes out, I guarantee Thing's getting pulled off to an actual good Fantastic Four team. Finally, they've never been good in this game. I'm going to say never. I don't think they were that good even when they originally released way back in the day. And Ronan and Mockingbird probably will stick together as a duo. I like that. But then Tigra, I think she'll get a rework to be on a West Coast team, perhaps a rework for Hawkeye, and then, I don't know, maybe you could throw Vision in there or something like that. He's not doing anything else. Maybe they'd keep Mockingbird with him, but I think they kind of would like Mockingbird and Ronan being a duo, and if you're already putting Hawkeye on this team, I don't think they're going to pull Ronan over as well, and then at that point, it's a ton of new Avenger characters moving on to the West Coast team, and then it could perhaps be a thing with, Wonder Man coming out when, is that TV show ever going to happen? And I think Spider-Girl, like Anya, is on the team too. I really do. That's one of my favorite Spider character that we do not have in the game yet. So perhaps like Anya and then Wonder Man could join this team, and then you'd have Hawkeye, Tigra, and then Mockingbird, Vision, or something like that join this team too. I will say, I think a lot of her kit way too restricted to War and New Avengers. This kit, even if you put her entire kit into her base kit, you got rid of all the points where it says in War and got rid of all the points where it says New Avenger only, I think she'd still be a mediocre character. Like, I'm just being honest right now. Like, she's already kind of a mediocre character, and then she's like borderline useless outside of War. I do not think it would hurt the game if they remove the in-war tag. I think that is something they could do to rework characters. Like, for example, the original Power Armor team. Like, what are they doing nowadays? Like, War Machine is absolute garbage tier. Like, does he really need those war tags in his kit anymore? Like the Wakandans. I think they're getting a rework with Black Panther Shuri coming along. But like, do they need that Crucible tag anymore? Like, they're so out of date. Even in the mode they're meant to be good in, they're useless. So like, perhaps if you made their Crucible tag just default, you know, I don't know, at least they could be a little better in the raids. You know, at least, I don't know, they could hold their own on Blitz or something like that. I think that is a very simple way to rework characters while simplifying the game retroactively that I do not feel the devs take advantage of enough when they're reworking these characters. But in her current state, I think there's too much behind War and too much behind New Avengers. Because let's say you put her on a team without the New Avengers. What is she doing? If it's not War and if it's not New Avengers, she's going to spawn, give herself some evade, she'll get some taunts and then die. Like, that is it. That is all you're looking at with her. At least in War, she's going to apply that bleed buff where you're doing more damage to people that have bleed, which is really cool. Again, I'm going to keep saying I love that effect. I think it needs to be buffed up a ton, and that is only in War. So, and you're not going to use Tigra outside of the New Avengers, so there's no flexibility here. You have to use her with the New Avengers. Something else I think would be really cool is considering the fact she does not get that much taunt. You know, if we go back to her kit right here, Ultimate, she's only getting 2 taunts across her kit with heavy cooldowns. And I think outside of War, she loses a lot of that protector aspect of herself. I think if we want to lean in onto this, you know, kind of hunter aspect of her, I think it would be really cool if she had a gimmick where it was like outside of War, you do not gain taunts, and instead she gets like 100% increase to her damage or something like that. Or outside of War, you know, she does 125% damage to people with bleed. And so we kind of could lean into this fact of, I don't think she's that good at being a tank, which is not the end of the world, but then she needs a different niche. So it's like, hey, if you're not using her in War when she's with her team and like barely a tank already, what if we then made her super offensive outside of War and outside of her role as a tank, because she can't be a tank outside of War. So let's lean into that. Let's give her some more offense when she's not on War. I think this would be kind of interesting to have a character that kind of wears 2 hats. You know, if in War, she's, you know, protector. Outside of War, we give her some buffs for her to be more offensive. I think that could be kind of interesting. I think it's an underutilized game design prospect that they have not put into this game. And I think it could be an interesting way to rework Tigra to not necessarily be War exclusive. You know, Battle World, it's going to be coming up eventually. You know, maybe it'd be cool to have somebody who could have you deal additional damage to somebody if they have bleed. Be a really interesting place for Tigra to slot into this game. So here's the future. New Avengers are dead. Don't build them. I'd wait for Green Goblin Classic to get more tags added to his trial. Do not even bother with it. She's probably going to end up on a West Coast team. What are they doing with Hawkeye right now? He's being saved for West Coast. And Tigra, when I think of Tigra, I think of West Coast. It's inevitable. We're getting a West Coast team. New Avengers are dead, so don't bother building them. And I'd really love a Brawler addition to her kit where she gets a ton more offense outside of War to kind of lean into the fact that she does not do well tanking outside of War. So that's my character deep dive on Tigra. As with many characters, we see traditional problems present in Marvel Strike Force: too restrictive of tags, too restricted to modes, and that leaves the kit kind of bland outside of the mode, and it still makes the kit kind of difficult to read. Like, look at I mean, this scrolls on for quite a while. If we got rid of this separation between in War and outside of War, this would make her kit much more digestible. She would actually be a relatively simple character, which is nice to have in this game that is like 6 years old. Sometimes new characters here have way too complicated kits, so that would be nice to have somebody that came out and had a simpler kit. Instead, we got to kind of keep track of, well, what does she have when she's in War, what does she have when she's not in War, and then she's New Avenger and then not New Avenger, and it doesn't matter because the team's dead anyways. So I think there is room for Tigra's future with this reliance on bleed and then this reliance on evades. I do like that, but they need to bump up all of those numbers for her to be relevant. Let me know what you think about Tigra down below. I was not here when the New Avengers got released, so perhaps I missed out on the excitement of New Avengers. I kind of came in afterwards, but I'm under the impression nobody was really that excited about the New Avengers at any point in time. But at the end of the day, what do I really know? Because I'm just a 22-year-old. You guys have a nice day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.